Hey everyone, and welcome back to the deep dive.
Glad to be here.
Today, we're going to be talking about something that I know a lot of you are interested in,
hmm
and that is magnesium and omega-3s for your brain.
Yeah, these are two things that come up all the time when we're talking about brain health.
Absolutely. And, people are always wondering, like, which one is better, or, is there one I should be focusing on more than the other?
Right. Is it one or the other?
So,
Or are they both important?
exactly. And that's what we're going to be kind of unpacking today.
Mm.
So, as always, we've done a deep dive into the research on this.
Yes, we have.
And we're going to break it all down for you and give you the key takeaways so you don't have to wade through all of the, technical jargon.
Right. We've weeded through it for you.
Yeah.
And we're just going to give you the nuggets.
The good
stuff.
Yeah.
The need to know info.
You need to know.
So let's jump right in.
First of all, the research really does confirm that both magnesium and omega-3 fatty acids are really important for brain health.
Right. Both are really key players.
But there's some nuances here, and the research we looked at seems to suggest that omega-3 fatty acids might have a more direct impact on brain health
Right.
than magnesium.
So they're both important, but omega-3s really seem to have a very specific role when it comes to brain development and brain health.
I see. So how would you break down the fundamental difference between the two in terms of how they actually work within our brains?
Well, if you think about it like this,
Okay.
omega-3s, they're actually structural components of our brain cells.
Oh, wow.
They really help build the brain,
Okay.
especially DHA, which is one of the omega-3 fatty acids, and they're really important for protecting against cognitive decline.
So they're literally part of the brain.
Yeah, they're like the building blocks.
Oh, okay.
And then they also are very important for regulating brain inflammation, which is something that's linked to a lot of neurodegenerative diseases like dementia.
Right.
Whereas magnesium
Okay.
is more like a support system.
Okay.
It's not necessarily a building block,
Gotcha.
but it's super important for making sure that everything is working properly.
So almost like it's like the foundation or something.
Yeah,
Okay.
or like the manager.
Okay.
It's making sure that everything's running smoothly.
Gotcha.
So it helps control inflammation,
Uh-huh.
but it also plays a big role in managing stress levels
Okay.
and in influencing mood and mental clarity.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so that's a good distinction.
Yeah.
So omega-3s, like literally building the brain, helping with the structure, and magnesium is more like the behind the scenes,
Yeah.
helping to regulate everything.
Exactly.
Gotcha. Okay. And the research also talks about how both magnesium and omega-3s affect the rest of the body as well.
Yes.
Not just the brain.
So not just brain specific.
Right. What are some of those other benefits?
Well, magnesium, for example, is really important for a lot of bodily functions.
Okay.
Things like regulating blood pressure,
Okay.
regulating blood sugar,
Okay.
and energy production.
Right.
So it has a big impact all over your body.
Wow. Okay. And what about omega-3s?
Omega-3s are also very important for regulating inflammation throughout the body,
Okay.
and they're well known for keeping your heart healthy.
Right.
So again, they have benefits beyond just the brain.
Okay, so it's really like a full body kind of support system with both of these nutrients.
Absolutely.
Okay, and when we're talking about omega-3s, I know that it's not just one type, right?
Right.
The research mentioned a few different types of omega-3s that we should be aware of.
Right. So there are three main types of omega-3s that we talk about,
Okay.
and those are DHA, EPA, and ALA.
Okay, what's the difference?
Well, DHA and EPA are the ones that are most closely associated with brain health.
Okay.
So those are the rock stars for your brain.
So those are the ones we want to focus on.
Right. ALA is another type. It's found in things like flax seeds and other plant-based sources.
Okay.
And your body can actually convert some ALA into EPA and DHA,
Oh, interesting.
but the conversion rate isn't very high.
Gotcha.
So if you're really looking for those brain benefits,
Yeah.
it's better to focus on getting DHA and EPA directly
No.
from your diet or from supplements.
Gotcha. So fatty fish like salmon and things like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Salmon, mackerel, sardines,
Okay.
all those good things.
Gotcha. Okay, so we've talked about kind of how they work differently in the brain, and we've talked about the different types of omega-3s.
Right.
What about the effects that they both have that are similar?
Hmm.
Because it seems like both magnesium and omega-3s can affect things like your mood and your anxiety levels and even your memory.
Right. And that's one of the fascinating things about these two nutrients
Yeah.
is that they have different mechanisms,
Yeah.
but they can lead to some similar outcomes.
Oh, interesting.
And that's because they both interact with brain chemistry and they both influence inflammation,
Right.
which we know plays a role in things like mood, anxiety, and memory.
So it's all interconnected.
It's all very interconnected.
Gotcha. Okay, so I think the big question that's on everyone's mind right now is which
Yeah.
one is better?
Right. Which one should I be taking?
Right, exactly.
Which one's more important?
Yeah, and I think that's what the research really aimed to answer.
It did. And the main takeaway here is that both are absolutely essential.
Okay.
You need both for optimal brain function.
So there's no clear winner.
Not really. No,
Yes.
it's not an either situation.
Okay.
Omega-3s might have a more direct role in building and maintaining your brain,
Right.
but you need sufficient levels of both
Yeah.
magnesium and omega-3s for your brain to work properly.
So it's about balance.
Yes, that's all about balance.
Gotcha. Okay, and what happens if you don't have enough of either?
Well, the research actually shows that if you have low levels of either magnesium or omega-3s, it can lead to cognitive issues. And both have been linked to an increased risk of depression.
Oh, that's significant.
Yeah, so that's really important to consider.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's also interesting how both of them are involved in managing inflammation in the brain.
Right, and that's why they both have this potential link to protecting against dementia.
So it's kind of like a two-pronged approach
Exactly.
to brain health.
Yeah, you want to be doing both.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit more specifically about magnesium and its effects on the brain.
Okay.
The research outlines a few key mechanisms.
Right, so the main thing to understand about magnesium
Okay.
is that it supports normal brain function,
Okay.
and it helps regulate brain inflammation.
Okay, so it keeps things running smoothly.
Yeah, it's kind of like the oil in the engine,
Gotcha.
making sure that everything is working as it should.
And what happens when there's not enough magnesium?
Well,
Does that create problems?
it can.
Yeah.
So low magnesium levels have actually been linked to increased brain inflammation. And this is something that can increase your risk for those neurodegenerative diseases.
Like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's.
Exactly.
Okay.
And the interesting thing is that studies have shown that people with Alzheimer's and Parkinson's often have lower magnesium levels.
Then healthy individuals.
Right.
Wow, so there is a correlation there.
There is a correlation.
Gotcha. And magnesium is also involved in the stress response.
Yes, very much so.
And I know we talked about this a little bit earlier, but can you elaborate on how that works?
Sure. So when you experience stress,
Okay.
your body releases a bunch of hormones,
Mm-hmm.
and magnesium actually helps regulate this process.
Okay.
So when you don't have enough magnesium, your body's ability to cope with stress is impaired.
So you're more susceptible to the negative effects of stress.
Exactly. And this can lead to all sorts of problems,
Such as?
increased anxiety,
Okay.
mood swings,
Okay.
depression.
Wow.
All of those things can be linked to low magnesium.
So it's like magnesium is like a buffer.
Yeah, it's like a protective shield
Yeah.
against stress.
Gotcha. Okay. And I know that the research looked at some pretty specific effects of magnesium on things like anxiety and depression.
It did. And what they found was really interesting.
What did they find?
They found that there's a strong correlation
Okay.
between low blood magnesium levels
Okay.
and the severity of depression.
Oh, wow.
So the lower your magnesium,
Yeah.
the worse your depression symptoms tend to be.
Gotcha.
And they also found that magnesium supplements
Okay.
can actually improve subjective feelings of anxiety.
That's great.
So that's really promising
Yeah,
for people who are struggling with anxiety.
definitely. Okay. And last but not least, in terms of magnesium's effects on the brain, it's also super important for sleep, which is obviously crucial for everything.
Absolutely.
How does magnesium help with sleep?
Well, magnesium actually helps regulate your sleep-wake cycle.
Okay.
And it also helps to calm the nervous system.
Gotcha.
So if you're not getting enough magnesium,
Yeah.
you might have trouble falling asleep
Okay.
or staying asleep.
Right, right.
And we all know that when we don't get enough sleep,
Yeah.
it affects everything.
Everything. Our mood, our brain function,
Exactly.
our focus, our concentration,
Right.
our memory.
Right.
Everything suffers.
Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
so let's switch gears now and talk about omega-3 fatty acids
Okay.
and their impact on the brain.
Sounds good.
The research really emphasizes how essential omega-3s are for brain health.
Right. And the key word there is essential.
Yeah.
Your body can't make omega-3s on its own.
Right.
So you have to get them from your diet
Okay.
or from supplements.
Gotcha.
And the research shows that omega-3 supplements can be really helpful for protecting against cognitive decline
Okay.
and for supporting brain function,
Especially as we age.
especially as we age.
Yeah, right. And it's not just for older adults either.
No, it's important throughout the lifespan.
Right. The research really highlights the role of omega-3s in fetal brain development. All right, so this is something that pregnant women need to be aware of.
Yeah, definitely.
They need to make sure that they're getting enough omega-3s,
Right.
especially DHA. which is really important for brain development.
And where do they get that? Is that through diet or?
Well, they can get it through diet,
Yeah.
but they may also need to supplement
Okay.
because it can be hard to get enough from food alone.
Right, especially during pregnancy.
Right.
There's a lot of demands.
Yeah, your body's working overtime.
Yeah, okay. And then similar to magnesiums, omega-3s are also really important for managing inflammation in the brain.
Right, and this is one of the key mechanisms by which they protect against those neurodegenerative diseases.
Okay.
So low levels of omega-3s have been linked to a number of different conditions.
Like?
ADHD,
Okay.
autism, bipolar disorder, depression,
Mm-hmm.
dementia.
So really a wide range.
Yeah, it's a pretty broad spectrum.
Wow, okay. And there's actually research suggesting that getting enough omega-3s can help protect against cognitive decline.
Right, so there was a study that looked at DHA supplementation,
Okay.
and they found that it actually reduced the rate of cognitive decline
Oh, wow.
in people with mild cognitive impairment.
That's huge.
Yeah, it's very promising.
And they also found that EPA and DHA supplementation can actually slow down the typical cognitive aging process.
Right, so they found that it slowed it down by an average of 2.5 years.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
Yeah, that's pretty significant.
Yeah, definitely. And it's not just about slowing down decline. It seems like omega-3s can also improve your current brain function.
Exactly. So they've done studies where they've given omega-3 supplements
Okay.
for older adults and to children,
Okay.
and they found that it can actually improve attention and memory.
Wow, that's great.
So it's not just preventative.
Right.
It can actually help you in the here and now.
Yeah. And finally, the research also touches on omega-3s and their effect on depression symptoms.
All right, just like magnesium.
Yeah.
Omega-3s seem to have a positive impact on depression.
Okay.
And the interesting thing is that they found that formulations with higher concentrations of EPA,
Okay.
like 60% or more,
Gotcha.
and supplements with at least 1 gram of EPA per day were the most effective.
Oh, interesting.
So the type and the amount of omega-3s you're getting
Uh-huh.
really seems to matter.
Okay, great. So we've talked about the benefits of both magnesium and omega-3s. Let's get practical now.
Okay.
What are some things that people can do to make sure they're getting enough of both?
Well, first of all, you can focus on your diet.
Okay.
So for magnesium, there are a lot of great food sources out there.
Like,
Leafy green vegetables
okay.
like spinach
Uh-huh.
and kale,
Okay.
legumes.
Like beans and lentils.
Exactly.
Okay.
Nuts and seeds.
Like almonds and pumpkin seeds.
Right.
Okay.
And whole grains.
Like brown rice and quinoa.
Exactly.
Gotcha. Okay, so lots of plant-based options.
That's some plant-based option.
Okay, and what about omega-3s?
Well, for omega-3s, the best source is fatty fish,
Okay.
like salmon,
Uh,
camet mackerel,
Wait.
sardines,
Gotcha.
herring, things
Next,
like
so
that.
aiming for a couple of servings of those per week.
Right. A couple of servings per week is a good goal.
Gotcha. Okay, and what about supplements? Because I know a lot of people don't like fish or,
Right.
maybe they're vegetarian or vegan or something like that.
Right. So supplements are a good option
Okay.
for both magnesium and omega-3s.
And what should people look for when they're choosing a supplement?
Well, for omega-3s,
Okay.
you want to make sure that it has both EPA and DHA,
Gotcha.
and a typical dosage is anywhere from 500 to 1,200 milligrams.
Of combined EPA and DHA.
Right. For magnesium,
Huh.
the elemental magnesium content is usually listed,
Okay.
and that's often between 100 and 150 milligrams per capsule or tablet.
Okay.
But there are a few things to keep in mind when choosing a magnesium supplement.
Okay. What are those?
Well, different forms of magnesium are absorbed differently by the body.
Oh, interesting.
So some forms are better absorbed than others.
Okay, so which forms are the best?
Well, magnesium citrate,
Okay.
acetyltaurate,
Uh-huh.
glycinate,
Okay.
L-threonate,
Okay.
and malate.
Gotcha.
Those are all well-absorbed forms,
Okay.
whereas magnesium oxide and magnesium sulfate are not as well absorbed.
Oh, interesting. So we should try to avoid those.
Yeah, if you're looking for a magnesium supplement,
Yeah.
I would recommend choosing one of those other forms.
Okay, great tip. And I think the general consensus here is that a lot of people could probably benefit from increasing their intake of both magnesium and omega-3s,
Right, I would agree with that.
whether it's through diet or supplements. But as always, it's important to talk to your doctor
Absolutely.
before starting any new supplements.
Yeah, always check with your healthcare provider.
Especially if you have any underlying health conditions or
Right.
you're taking any medications.
They can help you make sure that it's safe for you.
Okay, so let's talk about some of the potential risks or things that people should be aware of
Okay.
when it comes to taking magnesium and omega-3 supplements.
So in general, both magnesium and omega-3 supplements are considered safe
Okay.
for most people.
Good.
But there are a few things to keep in mind.
Okay.
So for omega-3s,
Okay.
the FDA recommends that you don't take more than 3 grams per day of combined EPA and DHA.
Okay. And that includes both from food and supplements.
That includes both food and supplements.
Okay.
And no more than 2 grams should come from supplements.
Gotcha.
So if you're taking a high-dose omega-3 supplement,
Yeah.
you might want to cut back on the amount of fatty fish you're eating.
Right. Okay. And why is there that limit?
Well, taking too much omega-3s
Okay.
can actually have some negative effects.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it can reduce immune function,
Oh, wow.
and it can inhibit blood clotting,
Okay.
which can lead to bleeding issues.
So it's important to stay within that recommended range.
Right, definitely.
Okay. And what about magnesium? Are there any risks with taking too much magnesium?
Well, it's pretty hard to get too much magnesium from food,
Okay.
but you can get too much from supplements.
Okay.
So there's something called the tolerable upper intake level, or UL.
Okay.
And for magnesium, that's 350 milligrams per day.
Okay. And that's just for supplements?
That's just for supplements,
Okay.
not for food.
Gotcha. So what happens if you take too much magnesium?
Well, the most common side effects are gastrointestinal issues,
Okay.
like diarrhea
Okay.
and abdominal cramps.
Okay. Not fun,
Not fun.
but manageable.
Yeah, usually manageable,
Okay.
but in very rare cases,
Okay.
extremely high doses of magnesium
Yeah.
can lead to something called magnesium toxicity,
Oh, wow.
and that can be more serious.
Okay. So how does that usually happen?
Well, it's usually associated with accidental overdoses
Okay.
of certain medications
Oh, okay.
that contain magnesium,
Oh, wait.
like some antacids and laxatives. So it's not usually something that happens from taking magnesium supplements,
Right.
unless you're taking a really, really high dose.
Okay. So it's important to be mindful of that.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. So to wrap things up,
Mhm.
can you just give us a quick summary of the most important points?
Sure. So basically, both magnesium and omega-3 fatty acids are super important for brain health,
Yeah.
but they have different roles.
Right.
Omega-3s are essential for brain development,
Uh-huh.
and both magnesium and omega-3s
Yeah.
contribute to overall brain function,
Okay.
mood regulation,
Uh-huh.
and controlling inflammation in the brain.
Gotcha. And if anyone's concerned about whether they're getting enough of these nutrients, they should talk to their doctor
Absolutely.
about whether they need to supplement.
Right.
Okay, great. So just to recap,
Mm-hmm.
both magnesium and omega-3s are vital for your brain, with omega-3s having a particularly direct role in development.
Right.
Understanding their individual contributions can help you make informed choices about your nutrition.
Absolutely.
And considering how interconnected brain health, mood, and inflammation are, what are some other things that you think people can do to support these benefits?
Well, I think it's important to take a holistic approach to your health.
Right.
So it's not just about taking supplements.
Yeah.
It's about looking at your diet,
Mm-hmm.
your lifestyle.
Your stress levels.
Exactly.
All of those things.
All of those things played a role.
Okay.
So I encourage you to think about what else you can do
Yeah.
to support your brain health.
Great advice.
Thanks.
Thanks for joining us, everyone.
See you next time.
We'll see you on the next deep dive.